As a recovering perfectionist, I've already talked about perfectionism several times on this podcast, but it's always a good reminder to revisit the subject because sometimes we have to heal the same thing multiple times to fully remove all of the remnants of it or merely integrating it. Perfectionism actually holds us back from just trying, from failing, and experiencing life. Perfection is an illusion. What's the point of trying to reach something that doesn't exist and which can only lead to an inevitable failure? Yet many of us have been suffering from perfectionism from the youngest age. A child is praised so much when he or she does something, air quote, perfectly, being rewarded, showered with love and praise when they do something right, but punished, ridiculed, or shamed when doing something, air quote, wrong, or at least not the right way in their eyes. It has been ingrained in our psyche that we need to wear the societal mask deemed perfect from a societal standard to fit in, to be loved, to have, and be valued. Perfectionism then becomes like a second skin. As much as it can greatly help in our studies and work, from a personal standpoint, it can easily become suffocating. Indeed, with time, pushing down your authenticity, losing your own self, even your self-worth, your gifts and uniqueness to fit into a mold for the comfort of others becomes too much to bear. Realizing that years are passing by, but you are still not living as you, as your true self, that you are still not dropping the mask to express all parts of yourself, your strength, your weaknesses, your quirks, and all of the things and traits that makes you you. I'm super honored to have Kristina Mänd-Lakhiani to discuss this very subject today. Kristina is the co-founder of the mega self-development educational platform Mindvalley, the one with all of the personal development superstars. She has been in the personal transformation industry for almost 20 years. She's an international speaker, entrepreneur, author, and philanthropist who mainly focuses on personal transformation, authenticity, understanding and accepting oneself, and a path to happiness. In her upcoming book, Becoming Flawesome, she reflects on her own story, her battle against perfectionism, and her journey towards her most authentic self. Not aiming for perfectionism here, but isn't she the perfect guest for today's topic? If you want to let go of past pain, transcend your traumas, expand your consciousness, and reclaim your power to finally be the main character of your own conscious reality, as well as learning about conscious living, you're at the right place. Welcome to Conscious Matters. It's a safe space where we chat about conscious matters, focus on self-empowerment, awareness, holistic wellness, and sustainability. Join me, Melissa DiBieri, for inspiring conversations with myself and some of the most beautiful souls out there. We expand on our experiences and share what we've learned along our healing journey to live in peace, harmony, and mindfulness on a daily basis. Oh, and share with loved ones, and don't forget to take 5 little seconds to review this podcast by just leaving a few stars and kind words. That would really help with the algorithm, so we can spread the message to help more people live consciously. Get your mind, body, and soul ready for a ride in consciousness. Namaste, listeners. Hello, Kristina. So nice to have you on today.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's a pleasure.
Let's dive into it right away. Perfectionism, to me, the way that I understand it is that it stems from feeling or thinking that you're not good enough or you're not lovable just the way that you are. So you have to present this perfect persona to have a sense of worth, of love, of appreciation. So in other words, there's a lot of shame underneath and maybe even guilt. So how does shame affect us when it comes to perfectionism? According to you, knowing that you said in one of your Mindvalley talks that love doesn't need to be earned?
Yes, I don't believe that love should be earned. And I think a lot of the times it's that paradigm that we grew in that is the cause or the reason of perfectionism. I do talk about perfectionism, although it wasn't specifically the object of my studies. And I actually doubt that psychology explains perfectionism as a phenomenon very much, because it's not a disorder or anything. It's actually a pretty normal thing for a lot of people. I know a lot of people that are perfectionists, even if they don't call it this way. Some people just say they have a high standard, or they're like, they like things to be done really well.
Yeah.
Now, how does shame come into play? I think shame is more or less a natural consequence of perfectionism. If you're not your best self, you blush a little bit and you feel shame. It's very normal. It's like a very simple analogy would be you walk into this party room and you slip and you fall down. What do you feel? You feel shame. So it's very similar with perfectionism. You just keep slipping and falling. And whenever you don't fit your picture of perfection, you feel shame. It's a natural consequence of that. Now, how it happens, and I think that's reference to the talk that you just mentioned, is that when we're children, we are usually dealt love on conditions. Even if our parents do love us unconditionally, it's a natural reaction to someone that you love and care about. When they do something that you don't like, a fairly natural reaction is to punish them in one way or another. And I'm a mother of two children, so I know what I'm talking about because I've done that. It's such a pattern so deep in us that sometimes we don't realize until we see the scared face of the child. So I remember my youngest daughter looking absolutely terrified one moment when I was upset with her. I don't even remember what I was upset for, but that face is with me forever, and it's a reminder to be kinder. So I asked my daughter, her name is Eve, do you think I don't love you? And she said, yes.
Oh.
And that was a wake-up call, because she knows that I love her. But in that moment when I was upset with her, her face betrayed genuine concern that I might not love her. And children, of course, they're still learning life. So it's natural for them to take meanings in the moment and not to think logically like, yeah, but mom loves me. Of course, she's just angry. They take it for what it is. So we learn from a very, very early age. When a child behaves well, we praise the child. And actually don't have anything against people praising their children. I think it's beautiful. But when children do something which we disapprove of, or we told them not to do because they're small, it's sometimes hard to explain that this is super bad. So we kind of punish them. Mommy is angry. And when mommy is angry, mommy is not as loving as she normally is. So we sometimes, even our body language sometimes shows that I'm displeased. We do that to grown-ups as well, to our partners, to our lovers. We do that as well when we're upset, when they don't correspond to our picture of how a partner should behave. We kind of punish them by withdrawing love. And that's just the transactional way we deal with love since a very young age. And in fact, I think for generations, maybe for thousands of years, humanity has been doing that, using love as currency in relationships. So naturally, when we grow up, we learn that love is to be given when you are good and is to be taken away when you're not good. And we keep doing that to ourselves.
Yeah,
It's
that's what I
just
was about to say. Yeah. That's funny that you use that example because I recorded the intro right before we got on here today. And it was exactly that. Like we learn from such a young age that love is conditional, even though, as you perfectly stated, that is not the aim of the parent or the goal of the parent to say, no, you bad, so I withdraw my love. But as a child, this is how it's felt. And we keep on repeating the same pattern to ourselves as grown-ups. So oh, I made a mistake, so I'm dumb. Or even like the little phrases that we use in our head when we mess up. It's a reflection of that too, like that conditional love.
Yeah, we are not very often paying attention to our self-talk, and our self-talk reflects our relationship to ourselves because we don't pay attention to that. And you talk about being aware of your experience. So it's very important to start noticing, because once you start noticing, very often you get horrified. In my talks, there's an exercise that I like to do. We actually do it with a little bit of meditation just to bring up the situation. Sometimes when you close your eyes and you place yourself in another setting, it's easier to feel how it is in real life. So I ask people to remember recent moments when they were displeased with themselves. So for example, I learned to ride a bike recently. So there was a period where I was...
Congratulations. It's never too late.
Yeah, I have never had a chance to do that. So I was 43 when I learned to ride a bike. And I remember when I was still not good, but I was forcing myself to practice. I would go on a bike and I would, of course, lose balance. And then my self-talk is like, what's wrong with you? Like, really? Again? You still can't do that? And that's kind of a funny thing. But if you place yourself in the situation recently where you were displeased with yourself, for example, you did something and your boss was not happy with how you did that, or you had an argument, it's usually the interaction with other people which creates the most intense emotions. And when we have this somewhat, arguing type of interaction, or when we hear criticism, it's quite natural to start doubting yourself, because if it didn't hit a raw nerve, you wouldn't feel anything. So remember any moment which was emotionally charged and just close your eyes and place yourself in that situation. Play it in your head like this is happening right now. This colleague of yours is giving you maybe undeserved, but like harsh criticism. And then remember your self-talk. What were you saying to yourself in that situation? And then I ask people to, when they open their eyes, I ask them to write down that self-talk. And the most remarkable moment happens when I ask them to find a partner, exchange the notes, and read it out to each other. That's when it hits home. That's when people suddenly realize how
harsh they are,
how not nice it is.
Yeah. Self-awareness is definitely the first step. And I really appreciate your transparency when it comes to the controversial side of personal growth and the insecurities that thrive from it. Because, like many people in the self-development world, I not only desire to become better, but I really want to become the best version of myself. And I also encourage other people to do the same. But the thing is, along the way, and I think that stems from the perfectionism tendency that I still have, I realized that I was beating myself up with my own mindfulness tools that were supposed to help me develop and transform into my most authentic self, my best and freest version of myself. And the realization is that right now I'm great as I am, and I can give myself self-love, self-care, and self-acceptance during my journey of growth. I don't need to wait to enjoy or to be nice or to be proud of myself. I can do that right now, like who I am right now. And I shifted my mindset from I need to be better, I need to be best, 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 best. So I shifted from a fixing perspective to a healing one. I'm not perfect and I don't need to be, but I can heal what needs healing inside of me, you know? So that's how now I say to not become the best version of yourself, but become the healthiest and most empowered version of yourself or ourselves. Tell me if I'm wrong, but that thinking to me relates to the Hermione syndrome that you were talking about and how to diagnose if you secretly suffer from it. So if you want to expand on that, that would be super interesting.
So I believe that perfectionism is actually the cause of our dark side. We don't always realize that. And how it happens is that we have a perfect picture of what it means to be the best version of me. Everybody has that picture, even if they don't call themselves perfectionists, or even if they're not, strictly speaking, in personal growth and transformation, every single person imagines what it means to be the best version of me. And these versions may be very different. So that's important to understand, that this destination is super different. I like to bring this analogy. When people fall in love, they usually also have a list of what makes someone a perfect partner. Those who are in personal growth, for them, very often this list is actually a very actual physical list. But for most people, it's a subconscious list.
Yeah.
But it is there. It is somewhere in your mind. And when you see a person who
sometimes
starts
on paper.
it may be on paper, yes. And when you meet a person who starts ticking the boxes in this list, of course you fall in love, and then biology helps along, and you are drugged by your hormones, and of course you close your eyes on the red flags and all that. So you keep falling in love, and of course the person also behaves well because they want you to like them. They say that it takes a few months to 2 years when the infatuation period is over, and then after that it's an actual relationship without the drugs or natural drugs making us go a little crazy. But at that moment you start seeing the person for what they are, and the red flags reappear, if there were red flags, and usually there are. So you have a choice of either loving the person the way they are, with their imperfections and with the red flags, or you get disillusioned. So the same thing happens in our relationship. It is a slightly different way of explaining why perfectionism leads to the feelings of shame. Because you see, when you don't fit that picture of the best version of yourself, it is a reality which is unpleasant to face. Yeah. You have to tell yourself that you are not as amazing as you thought you were. And I don't want to go into specific details, because for different people, it may be as slim and healthy and fit. For someone, it may be as smart and witty and maybe even cynical. We all have different picture what we want to be. But what happens when we face the reality that we don't like, we usually try to distort it in some shape or form. And there are a lot of different ways to distort reality. In psychology, these ways are known as defense mechanisms. And most of them have to do with not facing reality the way it is. So, for example, ignoring the fact that there are some qualities about you that you don't like, or fighting those qualities, trying to eradicate them. Or distorting reality, or explaining these things in ways which are a little bit more palatable. I'm not randomly angry at this person or dislike that person. I'm actually concerned. I want to make a world a better place. We are very good at how we distort reality, how we make ourselves feel better. Or, for example, I don't dislike you. I actually really like you. You're the one who are crazy. Yeah. So there are a lot of ways how we distort reality when we face the fact that we might be not as enlightened, peaceful, happy, witty, whatever it is, to be the best version of myself. And because we don't deal with that fact, fact, what happens is that fact is being pushed into the corner and ignored. And nothing which is pushed into the corner and ignored, or a slightly more vivid example, swept under the rug, it doesn't disappear, it stays there. And things, unresolved trauma or unresolved emotions, painful emotions, they have the tendency of leaking and explosively revealing themselves when we least expect. So because we strive for perfectionism, because we are obsessed with perfectionism, we create that huge wealth of dark side, which just piles up. And sooner or later, we will have to deal with that, or we'll feel discontent and we'll feel, unhappy or in the dead end. And that's the scariest thing. I've done all the work. I've done all the right things. Why am I not as blissfully happy as I thought I should be?
Oh, I love that sentence. I do. So if it's about the dark side and how we put everything under the rug, which I think that you 100% right on that. So I'm thinking about a person who, as you said, like is doing everything right, but is still struggling with being happy, being fulfilled, being the version that they want to embody. What would you recommend for them to face their dark side, everything that they pushed under the rug, so they can fully embrace the life that they deserve?
So if you don't mind, I'll leave the happiness aside because it's a topic that I've also studied quite a lot, and it would require a lot of explanation to add. But I would say just this much about happiness. You have much better chances at being happy if you learn to be at peace with yourself. I believe it's almost impossible to be happy if you don't like yourself. I wouldn't judge because there are no absolutes. Maybe somebody has perfected being happy and their happiness is in hating themselves, but that would be a very odd thing.
I demand to see that person.
But I would suggest that loving yourself is one part of being happy. And of course, happiness has other parts to it. Now, when it comes to coming to peace with yourself, and I'm not talking even about loving yourself, I'm talking about coming to peace with yourself, because this is the first step. In fact, we have to even retrace a little more. The first step is to learn to be truly honest with yourself. And that is a hard one because the nature of delusion is that we are never aware that we are delusional. Like the fish is never aware that it's in the water. Usually we don't realize that we do not live in reality. We live in a version of reality which is created by our brain, and the amount of delusion that we are fine with, which we tolerate, which we in fact encourage, is pretty big for most of us. Mm-hmm. But that would be another deep conversation to talk about self-honesty. What I want to say is that the first step is to learn to be honest with yourself. And that requires courage, and that requires kindness, because if you're honest without kindness, you'll be mean. And that's what we do very well. And that's why we don't like being honest, because it's painful. So courage and kindness are definitely very important pieces of the puzzle. Now, when you learn to know yourself the way you are, that's when you start working with being at peace with yourself, liking yourself, and eventually not just liking and loving yourself, but realizing that what makes you you is exactly your unique value, the best thing that you have to give to the world. So finding strengths in the things that maybe make you feel ashamed and less than and imperfect, that's the ultimate destination.
And that is the perfect segue to my following question. Actually, it starts with a quote from you. You said, "The world doesn't need your perfection. Nobody needs your perfection. The world needs the real you. Your first and foremost obligation is to love and accept yourself the way that you are, to see the value of who you are and what you are, because then you have the value to give to the world." And to me, that is so powerful, because the moment that we understand that, it's kind of the key to freedom, at least to me, because we all have this idea, probably from society biases, of course, that we have to be perfect in order to be loved, to be accepted, to belong, literally the essential and basic human needs, like, acceptance, belonging, and love. So can you share how you overcame your biggest fear that makes you look less than perfect, and what is that fear?
Maybe my brain just got stuck to what you were just saying. So if I forget to answer the question, then please remind me again. And
no worries.
Say it again. But I was thinking that, there are several reasons why we are afraid of going down that path, and they are very different. So one of the reasons why people are afraid to go down the path of self-love is this notion of you have to dedicate your life to something bigger than you. And we somehow think that that means also self-sacrifice and the sacrifice of your own happiness, and thinking of yourself as selfish. And that's a huge myth. Why I say that is because I think it is the lack of self-love that makes us do the horrible things in the first place. And on the other hand, very often if we go into doing altruism or charity or philanthropy out of our personal pain, we are actually not contributing to the world as well as we could. I want to share my personal story. Mindvalley is 20 years old, and it was about 10 years ago when I was still not 100% convinced that I have to go down the Mindvalley path. So
Really?
on one side, I'm an obstinate human being. So on one side, we're building Mindvalley, and it's my leadership style. I like to have teams to do the things and then just wander and keep doing things. So on one side, we were building Mindvalley, and we were helping wonderful authors to teach people how to live happy, fulfilled, extraordinary lives. So that was part of my life. But parallel to that, my background is actually in nonprofit. So parallel to that, I kept working with refugees in Asia because that was my passion, to do good in the world. I wanted to do good in the world, not business. So I was helping refugees, not helping. I was working with refugees in Malaysia, and we had refugees from Myanmar. So very, very sad stories on a daily basis. So people who would have lost everything, their families, their possessions, their home. They were not safe in Malaysia. So I had these two worlds, two parallel realities in my world. And it just happened so that my then husband Vishen was speaking on the same stage with Dalai Lama, and we had an audience with him. So I had to ask that question because it was puzzling me. I asked him, I said, I have these two worlds and I do not know how to reconcile them. How can I talk to people about being happy when there is so much misery in the world? Yeah, his answer was very Dalai Lama-ish. He said, Kristina, you can't help anyone if you're not happy.
Yeah,
it's simple and it's profound. And you see, he gave me that that permission. I needed permission at the time. I realized that it is so profound. We don't often catch on it, how profound it is that you have to be happy if you want to be of any help. And another story from my mom's life, because it's just very dramatic. My mom used to work in orphanage here in Estonia. And in a Western affluent country, kids who end up in orphanages are usually the most marginalized. I wouldn't say quite abandoned kids, but kids from very complicated backgrounds. So she had children whose parents were in jail, were addicted, who were very, very hard, tough parents. I remember her coming home and she's saying, it's so amazing because they have some of the most unfortunate parents you could have, like the worst luck with having parents, and still they love them. And all they care about is the parent comes and just spends time with them, no matter how horrible that parent is. It was such a crazy thing to realize that very often we underestimate the value of our own well-being for the people that we love. We think that what they want from us is to be those successful, rich, beautiful. But what our loved ones really want from us, what we want from our loved ones, is a very simple thing. Just be here, be with me, be happy.
Yeah. Beautiful. That's beautiful. And it's something that we forget so often that I think it was a good reminder. So thank you for that. My question was actually, what was your biggest fear and how you overcame it, even though it made you look less than perfect?
Yeah, I forgot the question.
It's okay. No worries.
Okay, my personal biggest fear was that I would have to change my life.
Oh, okay. Why was that? I know that change is the fear of so many people, but why was it for you?
There are things that we are okay to change, and there are things that we're not so okay to change. I think when it comes to self-honesty, these are the two reasons, the most common reasons, because I've talked to a lot of people. Of course, I base a lot of my research on my own experience, but when I talk to people, I discover the actual ways the world works. So there are two biggest fears why people are afraid of self-honesty, which is the first essential step towards loving and accepting yourself. One of them is what we started with, that if I find out the truth about myself, I won't be worthy of love. I won't be able to love myself. If I acknowledge that quality about me is not just about habit, it's just what I am. Can I still love myself? Or do I have to keep working on eradicating a natural part of me? Otherwise, I'm not worthy of love. That's the problem. The problem with us is that we don't work with things which we need to get rid of. We try to get rid of essential parts of what makes us us. You said you're struggling with perfectionism. I've struggled with perfectionism. And I have to make a little caveat before I go into that. Perfectionism is an easy flaw to admit. We wear it as a badge of honor. It's not a very hard flaw to admit. But I'll use this one as an example because then you won't judge me. So I used to call myself recovering perfectionist because I love the phrase.
Oh my God, I say that about myself, and it's actually in the intro.
It's not the end of the. It's not the end of what I'm saying now. until a few years ago, I realized that I can't recover from being myself.
Yeah.
And in my case, in somebody else's case, that may be not true. But in my case, perfectionism is forever a part of me. In that case, when I'm looking my perfectionism in the face, I have a choice. Do I just accept it and learn to live with that and learn a way that it doesn't prevent me from moving? It doesn't prevent me from challenging myself. I'm still afraid of competition because that's the place where I might lose and feel bad about myself. And that's also part of perfectionism. You're so afraid of not being perfect that you wouldn't do certain things rather than risk facing such shame. So the moment when I realized that perfectionism is forever a part of me and that fear of competition, of failing is forever a part of me, it's not about eradicating it or training myself out of being perfect or trying to be perfect. Yeah. It is about harnessing it, just living with it, making it my blessing rather than my curse. But that's making it into a blessing rather than a curse is a further work because it's a little harder. Because, okay, let's leave perfectionism aside. How about my natural vanity, desire to be liked? Of course, I can tell myself it's futile, but if it's part of me, can I live with that? And this is not such a sexy thing to admit as perfectionist. And I have others, but I won't go there. You don't know me enough.
We won't pick you apart today.
So one reason why people are afraid, to be honest with themselves, is that they're afraid that whatever they discover is going to take away their ability to love themselves. It is going to make it impossible because how can I love this person? And the other reason is the one which I was afraid of the most, is that when I discover the truth about myself, I will have to change my life in the ways that I'm not ready. There are ways to change your life. There is a way to adopt a new exercise routine or exercise more or to start meditating. These are the changes which everybody can. No matter how you implement them in your life, but then you might discover that you're not happy in your relationship. Your job that everybody feels you're so lucky to have makes you miserable. That the career path that you chose because you wanted to earn a lot of money and be a success is actually the exact opposite of what your heart wanted you to do. Or that maybe having children is not your path. These are the things which is so hard to admit because these changes are not the same as starting to eat differently, exercise differently.
Do you think that these changes are harder to make because they go against what society expects of us? Why is it harder?
Because they will change your life so much more profoundly than any other things. I have a slightly ugly analogy, but so I hope you forgive me for that. But you see, I'm a perfectionist and it's so easy to keep yourself busy with all the things which are easy to solve. So the analogy goes like that. Imagine that you have a pile of dung in the middle of your living room and it stinks and you can clean the rest of the living room to be sparkling. Take care of everything, the curtains, the windows, the mirrors, everything. Every single surface is sparkling. Everything is sparkling except this one huge pile. Very often what we do is that we deal with the rest of the living room. We keep ourselves busy taking care of everything except this one thing, which is ruining the whole picture. It's not because of what society will say. When me and my then husband decided to separate, of course, there was a lot of opinion about that. A lot of people, we had like thousands of comments. Everybody commented on, you disappointed me, as if our personal decision had anything to do with the rest of the world. But you don't really care about that. Think of when you do a post on Instagram, you sometimes go and check, did this one person actually like it or at least see it? Because when you talk about the opinion of the world, we actually care about the opinion of the few. When we decided to separate, yes, we had thousands of comments, but the news was the hardest to tell to our children and to our parents because these were the people whose opinion mattered. It's a beautiful story that I don't want to make this change because society will not accept me. I have responsibilities. Usually what happens is that when you discover that part about yourself, that something in your life is like this pile of dung in the middle of your living room, no matter how well you take care of the rest of your life.
You're still going to stink.
It is always and forever going to be stinking, even if it's under the sofa. Because the thing is that very often when we finally find out who I truly am, it very often leads to some changes which are hard to decide about. They're not hard to implement. Once you make a decision, they're very easy to implement. It's just that admitting that this one thing is that stinking reason in my living room, admitting it is the hard thing. It's like jumping out of the plane with a parachute. It's just this one step which is hard, but once you make the step, you're flying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Getting started.
Society has a lot of opinions, and some of those opinions we adopt because there are opinions about, having a certain amount of career and income at the age of 27. And then there are opposite opinions in the society as well. But the question is, which of them do we adopt? That's the interesting thing about us, our psychology. We're so afraid of some decisions that indecision is a terrible burden. Mm-hmm. But once you make a decision, even if it's the worst case scenario, you suddenly find the second breath. There are ways. Once you face your dragon, you can figure out how to work with it, how to live with it.
Yeah, oftentimes we feel like there's one option, one solution. Maybe it's like our lack mindset. But when we, as you were saying, like facing, what was the expression that you used, facing your dragon?
Yes.
So when you face
a dragon.
I mean, it's a very good analogy. When you face them, you might realize that you have more options than what you were thinking. For that, we need to face it or face them if there are many.
And you know what? The sooner you face your dragons, the more options you leave open to yourself.
Yes.
Because if you wait until the last moment where there's no other way but just take a sledgehammer and smash it all into pieces,
extreme.
And it's going to happen. I mean, if you can't bear your situation, but you're making a good face and pretending that everything is fine, then it is going to happen sooner or later.
And in that same vein, like I absolutely love one other thing that you said. You said that the things that make you cringe is what makes you you. And I totally relate with you when you were sharing your struggles with public speaking, being overly analytical, too passionate, having a weird accent, quote unquote, of course. It has been like one of my challenge and partly why I started this podcast and my YouTube channel to fight my own fear of speaking up, of getting myself seen, and also fighting my own perfectionist tendencies through releasing podcast episodes after episodes and videos after videos, even when they're not perfect, when to me, like I sound or look super cringe or I don't like one thing that I'm doing. But finally embracing these imperfections actually made me improve my skills and also embracing what makes me me. So it's that very process of showing up before feeling or being perfect that helped me regain a lot of confidence in myself when I lost it. And funny enough, I lost it when I was actually trying to be perfect all of my life prior. So I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah, thank you. You know, I think there are two reasons why it works. Reason number one is the easy one. And I'm going to refer to a movie.
Okay.
X-Men.
Yeah.
There's this character, Mystique, who in her natural form is blue with red hair and very outlandish, but she shows up as a beautiful young girl most of the movie because she's shapeshifter, so she can show up as anything she likes. So she puts all this effort into looking acceptable. And there's this another character who says, while you're trying to be something else, you're actually taking away half the focus from the things that matter. And that's one of the big reasons why accepting your imperfections is very liberating, is because you can finally stop pretending and trying so damn hard and focus that energy on things that matter. Rather than being something else, you can do things that you do well. And we could go into this discussion very, very deep because it's also very deep rooted from very young age, from school, when they tell us to work on our mistakes and work on all the things that we are bad at, equating that to success. Just imagine, and I'm not going to go down this path very long because it's a long discussion, but just imagine if all your childhood, for you to be the best, rather than people telling you to do the things that you're bad at, they were telling you, what do you love the most? And do that more. We don't imagine that paradigm. So that's one of the reasons why it's so liberating to just accept yourself the way you are, because you will free up so much of your energy. It's insane. The other reason why it's liberating, and that's a little harder because it requires a little more philosophical approach. I will quote one of my favorite characters from fiction, Elizabeth Bennet from Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice. She was discussing what makes someone a perfect woman, and her comment was, that would be a fearsome sight. So imagine a perfect person like a Stepford wife, right? That would be a fearsome sight because that would be something so stifling. Very often we don't realize that what we like about other people is their relatability, that we can learn something from them, that they can inspire us, that they can be of help to us. And I'm not talking just about our niche where we speak or write and, where we're teachers. So coming back to the story that you were telling, I have the habit of comparing myself facet by facet. So if I go on stage, I will think like, oh, but that speaker is better at speaking, and that speaker has a bigger business than mine, and that speaker has a best-selling book. You take facet by facet, you tear yourself apart, and you will always find someone who is better at something that you think you're good at. You're not the best in the world in this, you're not the best in the world in this, in this, in this, in this, whatever you take. And this is such a slippery slope. A friend of mine said, we are so obsessed with the idea of having a talent that we're sometimes forgetting that we are multi-talented. Absolutely. And what makes you unique is not that you're the best in the world in one thing, but that you combine your unique little quirks into this one beautiful whole. So when I was going on stage, I was so scared. I couldn't remember how to breathe. So I was standing somewhere in a remote corner, trying not to freak out. And then this woman just walked by and she saw me and recognized me. And she said, "Oh, I can't wait for you to speak because you are not like other speakers. When you talk, I feel like you're talking to me directly." And I realized, I'm here on the stage not because the world needs another replica of another successful person. I'm here because whatever I say is needed by this one woman who wanted to be spoken directly. It's your unique combination of your unique quirks that make you valuable. And we sometimes underestimate that, but when you get it, then you realize that it's your mistakes, your failings, the things that you have done wrong, that you have realized, that you have learned, that have brought you where you are. And can you value that experience and see the strength in it?
Things are changing now in the way that children are being educated, but if we could remind them that very thing that you said all the time, I think it will be so different how they will grow up as adults.
I hope so, yeah.
And when we look at everything you've accomplished personally and professionally and the amount of people you help find themselves, and as you stated it, your fairy tale life, and from an outside perspective, you live your life by the rule book. And I think you even say, like, I had 2 children, a boy and a girl, like, so so you're in the statistics. So we can only be in awe of you and see you as someone who had achieved the perfect life. And we cannot think of you as any less than perfect, but to prove to us that no one is perfect, could you share what you are not so good at or a shocking fact about yourself?
What I'm not so good at. I'm not so good at a lot of things.
Okay,
but
that's humbling for us.
One of the things which I said I won't share with you because you don't know me well and you'll judge me is that I'm a very laid back person. I like to take my time. Well, I can say it the way it is. I'm a lazy person.
That was very diplomatic the way you said it first.
But it is true. And, in this world of hustlers, I struggled with it so much. And I tried to pretend and tell people all sorts of stories, but then I realized that quality also makes me optimize, makes me really good at creating amazing teams. I'm very good at delegating things. And what I do, you know how it is in business. You can do everything in your business and you will probably stay at a fairly small level because we have limits. Our physical bodies have limits. And I remember when it's one of the trips that we took to Necker Island. It's Richard Branson's island. And I was then married to Vish, and he asked Branson, he said, "You have 300 companies and, so many of them are, probably more than 300, so many of them are successful. How do you do that?" And he said, "When I'm excited by something, I find people who share that passion with me, I let them do it, and I get out of their way."
Oh,
and this is exactly how I operate. I actually do that too. I'm so good at delegating, and you might laugh at things, but the thing is that it makes me what I am. It makes me do things which maybe, normally, a perfectionist would just sit down and do on my own. But
yeah, that was my question. Like, how do you work with that? Like being a perfectionist and at the same time delegating so much. That's my struggle, to be honest. So I'm like all ears to learn.
Well, I recognize that I'm a perfectionist, and then I tell myself, okay, I'll do that. I'll have someone else do that, because you always look at the big picture. It's the awareness. It's what you talk about. You have to keep yourself aware the whole time. What kind of choice are you making? Do you need to keep doing that? What is it going, to cause? Like, for example, when I was writing my book, after a few circles of editing, I actually felt like taking it back for another month or 2 and just redoing it again. And then my question was, can I make it perfect? Do I have to and jeopardize everything that's going to happen? Or do I let it go, knowing that it's going to be painful? It is a painful experience to let it go. But I remember the big picture. My bigger picture is something else. So I am going to let it go. And I'm so optimistic that I told myself, maybe it's a lie, maybe it's a distortion of reality, but I told myself, my book is going to do good. We're going to have a second edition. And in the second edition, I go nuts and make it perfect again.
Yeah, the thing of focusing on the big picture and releasing control, I think is super key and super important, especially when you're trying to make everything perfect. If what you're doing right now is building into that vision, that bigger picture, then it's okay. You can let it go and you can keep on growing it. I like that.
But you see, you said you have a contradiction in those two qualities, but we are made of contradictions.
I'm a walking contradiction. Like I'm the duality in me is not even duality, is like multi-layered. And sometimes I even confuse myself. But that's what you said before about your friends saying that what people actually love and what they require of others is to blend these different qualities, this multi-layeredness of ourselves. So I'm starting to embrace that as well. Even though it can be confusing for some people, I guess.
Yeah, so not all our dragons are sexy.
Not at all, yeah. I agree with that. Do you have simple daily habits that you do to be more conscious and act more consciously in life, even if that doesn't make you look or be perfect?
The most important ground, or let's say fundamental habit in personal growth is definitely a habit of awareness, which I adopted such a long time ago that I don't think I ever took it in this big context of what I'm teaching right now. I spent 30 days just practicing awareness. It was as a result of one training. So for 30 days, I was just having reminders on the phone here and there, doing things in new way. And awareness is such a curious habit. Once you switch it on, it's really hard to switch it off. You know, that's one more of my dragons. I'm very much in my head. And in our industry, it's almost considered like a bad neighborhood. You know, don't be in your head, be in your body. But I embraced it. It is what it is. So my question is not how to change it. My question is how to bridle it. And because I'm always in my head, it gives me an edge as well. So how can I turn it into my blessing rather than my curse? I'm an everyday life philosopher. You see, I'm lazy and I'm always in my head. So sometimes when I wake up in the morning and I feel not in the mood to go out, I call it a research day. I stay in bed and ponder. I get into my existentialist mood. And eventually the perfectionist side in me kicks in. Actually, the more, not so much the perfectionist, but the busybody side in me kicks in. And I'm like, okay, I need to start doing
now
something.
We need to apply it.
We don't trust ourselves. We force ourselves to do things which are not natural to us, rather than trusting that if you give yourself permission to just embrace what you are, you're going to get out of this funk. So I'm always in my head, but that also gives me an opportunity to see things the way other people don't see, to explain them the way other people don't explain. So yeah, it is annoying. And sometimes like, stop thinking, just chill, go out for a walk. So one of my traditions, which I really value, is walking daily. If I can for an hour, if I can't for half an hour, this is my habit. This is my meditation. This is my way to stop overthinking too much. It's dark in Estonia in winter. It's my way to get some vitamin D. I have a lot of other things, but awareness for me, it's a little bit of a curse, but that's the most important habit for any change, because unless you see it and notice it, you can't find the need or the want or the wonder to want to change it.
And I loved what you said, because I realized that I'm doing that as well. So I'm going to call these days existential days. That's how you call them. So now I'm going to use your phrase, like today is an existential day. Because I'm like that too. Like I'm so much into my head sometimes, but I realize how it helps me too, because like, once again, like this duality, like I'm so much in my head, but also very practical and all hands on deck as well. So once I'm like done with the, like saying like it's the vortex and like this layer and this layer and this layer that I go through my head, and then I'm like, okay, now I need to apply it. What can I do with it? So I guess it can be seen as a curse, but it's also a blessing. And thank you for giving me like a name to it. So where can we get our hands on your upcoming book, and where can we find you online?
My upcoming book is called Becoming Flawesome. I talk about those topics. I actually go deeper into some of them. The book is available on mindvalley.com/books/flawesome. If you pre-order it from Mindvalley website, it comes with one of my newest programs on self-love.
You're generous. Blessing people like that with a program and a book. So can you tell us how you came with the title? Because I guess it's like flaws and awesome, but how did they came together?
It's an orphan word on internet. It's a thing. Yeah, because I wrote the book about, I think the first title was something about finding the path back to you, something along those lines. So I was writing a book about finding yourself again. Mm-hmm. And then at some point, I just saw that word and it made so much sense. So you'll find the word in the book as well, but the word found the book. I adopted it. It was orphaned. Nobody wanted it.
You're good adopted mom. Thank you so much, Kristina. It was such a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Yes, you were such a wonderful host. I enjoyed it so much.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. You know who made it. Thank you to have taken the time to listen to me talking about conscious living. Conscious Matters is a self-produced podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please share, leave a review, and/or donate. Your support will help to keep on raising the collective consciousness together. Take care and talk to you soon.